And so this is my presentation on how I did synchronous technology and online during spring quarter during this last school year. Here are some observations, or rather an outline of observations that I'm going to try to cover. And of course, we used Microsoft Teams, PowerPoint. I used writing on a digital tablet. I did video recording from time to time. And recently, I've actually been learning about editing those video recordings, which is sometimes helpful. Hopefully, that can be avoided. But of course, as some of you probably know, unfortunately, there are times when we really want to be able to edit our videos. And then I'm going to mention some future improvements and leave time for questions. So here are some suggestions regarding Microsoft Teams. When I first started, or before spring quarter started last year, I contacted Chin Ma and I said, hey, we should connect through Microsoft Teams and practice as if he's a student and I'm a student, and we could take turns trying to navigate around in Microsoft Teams. And so some of us have already been using Microsoft Teams a lot, but if you haven't used it a lot yet, that's a good technique, is to practice with somebody. It is actually possible to practice alone, all by yourself, if you have two screens. I guess even if you don't have two screens, you could do it. If somebody is interested in that, you can ask me about that later. But basically, you create a link in a session, and then you click that link, and it starts a browser, and you can have your browser open and Microsoft Teams open at the same time, and you can be the teacher and the audience all at the same time. So that is helpful because, of course, it takes some getting used to navigate around inside Microsoft Teams. So anyway, when I was teaching my class, my general approach was that I would meet with my students at the designated scheduled time each day when it happened in the week. And so my classes were synchronous, and I expected my students to show up. And I had fairly small class size, and they were seniors, and so I was very successful with them. They were very mature about it. They did a good job. I was quite proud of them, and that all worked out nicely. But so anyway, I used PowerPoint slides for lecture. I made those slides available to students. I found out that theory, of course, can be covered fairly quickly this way. There are some pros and cons to that, because sometimes they would tell me that I went through the theory too fast. So, of course, although it may help you to be more organized with pre-made PowerPoint slides, there can be some drawbacks in some ways. I also found that it's very helpful to have two screens, so that I can have Microsoft Teams open in one screen and my PowerPoint or whatever else that I'm showing my students on the other screen. So that's something to think about if you don't have two screens, is to try to get another one. So although I would do lecture with PowerPoint slides, I also had class periods for students to do homework. And I would just tell them, sometimes I would just take an entire class period, and I'd say, today, our whole class period is just going to be to work on homework. I'm going to sit here, you're going to sit here, you're going to be hooked up on Microsoft Teams, and so am I. If you have questions, you can ask me right here on the spot. You can talk to your classmates, and they did that. They would work with each other, and that was really good as well. And so while that was happening, of course, all the students can hear whatever coaching that I gave. and they also got to hear what their classmates were doing. And so students really appreciated that. I got the sense that the student morale was greatly improved because, when they're stressed and it's, you're working through the quarter, there are times where they feel like they're behind in the homework. And so they felt thankful when I would give them those times. And so I feel like that was a good morale booster. We also, of course, heard from campus, from our administrators, that sometimes students were voicing concerns about feeling connected. And I feel like those homework times sometimes helped improve that feeling of connectedness. So that's also a benefit. The last thing I think I have here, at least regarding the students at this point, is from time to time, of course, I would compliment the students for being on time, being in school, and pursuing a challenging major. And I did this because I gained respect for them for showing up and being there. And I think that even though they didn't always, maybe comment or say anything about my comments, I think that helped them know that I appreciated them. And I really feel like they appreciated getting that feedback and knowing that I noticed their behavior and that they were doing their part in helping me, because of course we were all in this together, and of course we preferred to be in school live, but we weren't able to, and so it's good to let them know that they're appreciated. Outside of class, I would meet with individual students as needed, and I would do that through Microsoft Teams, of course, and I would give help on homework, or I would explain course content again if I needed to. And from time to time, sometimes it was necessary to draw on the screen, and so I would use a tablet, a writing tablet with Microsoft OneNote. And that was a really good way to draw on the screen, let them see what I'm talking about, point to various things in a picture that I might draw, and get on the same page in terms of understanding what each of us are talking about. So now some just general comments and so on about PowerPoint presentations. And as I mentioned at the beginning, some of these things, you maybe don't need any instruction on this, but I'm just, these are things I observed. Choose a sensible background color and text. Include relevant pictures and illustrations as much as possible to try to make it more interesting rather than just words all the time. And I chose the background color and the text with a mind towards making these PowerPoints print friendly, because many of my students would want to print these out to the presentations in PowerPoint. They would want to print them out so that they could study, or that they could have them at hand when they took exams, or while they were working on homework. And so it's something to think about to make sure that it comes out nicely in white or black. And in PowerPoint, white or black text prints black when you go to choose grayscale. And that way, when they're printing, because they probably don't want to print, I'm guessing, in color, because of course that's going to take a whole bunch of ink from their printers. So that's why I was trying to be thoughtful about the black and white printing options. Now, also, as I go in this presentation, I'm going to talk about LaTeX formulas. Some of you may be interested in that, some of you may not, but what I chose to do was to use black for the color of LaTeX formulas. And if you use that color, it will print black when you print your PowerPoints also. If you were to use white for those formulas, it then doesn't show up when you print to black and white. And that's why I'm mentioning that. The other thing that I noticed, again, in terms of making the PowerPoints print friendly, is that if you go to PowerPoint and you select the Design tab and you go over to this option here, I always was selecting hide background graphics, because background graphics sometimes seem to be showing up and I didn't want them to bother the printing in black and white. At least that's what I was finding. So that's what I always checked off over there. So now, while we're doing PowerPoints, of course, we're going to want to do some formulas. And I think everybody who is here to hear this presentation is in some various form of a STEM type department. And so knowing how to do superscripts and subscripts is often important. And so I found these shortcut keys that maybe you haven't seen before, but in PowerPoint, if you do Control-Shift+, it will put you into superscript mode. If you do Control-Shift+ again, it will go back to regular text mode. And so that's a quick way to insert that type of thing into your text in PowerPoint if you need to. If you do just simply Control+, that will put you into subscript mode, and you can repeat that again to get out of that mode and back to normal text. So that I found to be useful, because with equations, of course, you can use the PowerPoint equation editor. I never chose to use that. Some people may like that, but I find it to be more difficult to use if you're doing lots of formulas. A lot can be done just with regular text and superscripts and subscripts. So that can get you by if that's all you want to do. Perhaps that would be enough. My preference is actually to use LaTeX in PowerPoint. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about that in a bit. In fact, here it is. It is possible to include LaTeX formulas in PowerPoint. And the way that that can be done is if you go into, well, you go to a website, which I have listed here, and you go and you download this thing called Iguanatech, which is an add-in for PowerPoint. And at that website, it gives some instructions for installing Iguanatech into PowerPoint. Now, in order for that to work, you must have also installed MikTeX, which is the LaTeX software that needs to be installed on your computer in order for Iguanatech to interpret your LaTeX commands and then insert it into PowerPoint. If you need help with that, of course, you can talk to me more about that later. But basically, I'm going to escape for a second here and show you more of my PowerPoint screen, and you'll see that there is an Iguanatech tab that has been added to my PowerPoint. If I click on that, it gives me some more options, and basically I just use these two options over here. I can add a new LaTeX formula, or I can edit an existing formula. So for example, if I come down here and click on this LaTeX formula, I can actually move it around wherever I want it on the screen. I can also make it larger if I want to and put it wherever I need to put it. This becomes really handy for placement of formulas on the screen wherever you need to have them. And if I were to edit that, of course, it comes up with a little window for me to put in my LaTeX. Now, if you know enough about LaTeX to do formulas, really right here is the only place you need to put in information. And I added the option for doing various colors, but in the end, I just use black. So you really don't need that part. And it just needs to be between $2 and you can put in your information. But like I said, uh, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if anybody has further questions about that in the future, I can certainly help you with it. Um, but after putting in your formula, you click regenerate and it will update and put the formula on the page. If you do a new one, of course, there's no formula here. And so then you would put in like maybe you could put in some Greek letters and generate that. And it will show up on the screen. It's hard to see, but it showed up right there. I can make it bigger, and then I can put it wherever I want to. So a really good resource on the internet is also listed here on this page for how to type in simple LaTeX math formulas. And it shows you how to do Greek letters and square roots and matrices and summation signs and all kinds of things like that. And I imagine some of you already know all about LaTeX and might appreciate that. Okay, so now the next thing that I learned while doing PowerPoint was that, of course, I wanted to be able to do graphics here and there. And of course, one way to do that is to do screen capture. And this software that's free on the internet called GreenShot is the one that I use. And I find that to be really, really helpful. And you can capture any, section of your computer screen and then put that into PowerPoint, copy and paste, basically. If you're within a PDF file, you can select the edit menu and go down and choose the option take snapshot. And then that allows you to drag a window over a portion of your PDF file and capture a picture out of your PDF and then paste that into PowerPoint. So that is also another way that you can sometimes capture something, a graphic, or maybe even a formula if you are wanting to do it that way. To reduce blurriness, sometimes when you take a screen capture inside the PDF, the graphic will turn out blurry. But if you blow up that picture inside the PDF first, and then take the snapshot of it, then the resolution is better and it won't be quite as blurry. It will be a lot nicer. So that's something to think about. I often would sometimes draw pictures by hand, and I would then scan them into a PDF, and then I would take a snapshot of that picture and paste it into PDF. And so you can see a couple examples of things I used. You also can use the drawing tools that are available inside PowerPoint. And at the Home tab over here, you can see there are a bunch of different graphics and things, lines and arrows and so on that you can draw things in PowerPoint. And so I certainly made use of that as well. Now, there's a lot of information in this presentation. Obviously, implementing all of these things is not going to happen necessarily immediately. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I was really busy spring quarter. And there were times when I just flat out ran out of time. And so I'm just suggesting that, you may have some notes that are already made and you have them scanned, perhaps, and you can just take a snapshot inside that PDF and paste it right into your PowerPoint. And once in a while, that's the way it goes. And you may have run out of time, and so I certainly did that from time to time also, to do maybe examples or calculations that I could share with students in the PDF, or I should say the PowerPoint. Another thing that I used during the quarter was a digital writing tablet. The one that I used and that I have actually here with me right now is this tablet by Wacom. And unfortunately, that tablet, I think it is possible to find, but it's not very easy to find it. I think I saw maybe a few of these available on Amazon, so they're hard to get because it's an older model from like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it works quite well. I was happy with it. Another tablet that I have is this Huon Inspiroi H640p tablet. And of course, it takes some getting used to writing with these tablets. It takes a little bit of dexterity because, of course, this writing surface, if you get a smaller one, is not as big as a regular piece of paper. So your motor control with your fingers and writing the letters and correlating that with what you see you're doing on the screen can take some practice and getting used to. But I felt that these were helpful in a couple of ways. So I use the tablet for grading electronic homework or exams or reports. And the way that I would do that was that I discovered that you could print any document to Microsoft OneNote. And so it is as if Microsoft OneNote is a printer. If you go and select print inside of a file, you will find that if you go and look at your list of printers, you will find Microsoft OneNote as one of your printer options. And so then I would get, I would have my students email me their PDF of their scanned homework. And I would then print that to Microsoft OneNote. And then I was able to use my tablet to write in red graphic ink and show them where their mistakes were and give them scores and return that to them so that they could learn from their homework. So then once you're done making all of your marks on their homework, you then can then just print from Microsoft OneNote back to a PDF file and then send that back to the student. That way I didn't have to go and print all of their homework out, grade it, rescan it, and email it. I kept it all electronic. And so I became comfortable enough with that, as I mentioned, I did homework, exams, and even senior project reports entirely by using my tablet and marking up those documents. Now, during class or a one-on-one session with an individual student by way of Microsoft Teams, I would share my screen like I'm doing now, and I would use Microsoft OneNote. Microsoft OneNote, to me, just for whatever reason, seems to be software that's set up really well to work with tablets. And so that's why I used it. I know that some people have mentioned writing directly in PDF files, and it sounds like that some folks have found that to be successful and that they like that. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but so far I haven't found that to be as easy. And so Microsoft OneNote, for some reason, seems to function much better and allow me to write much more smoothly than in the PDF files. So that's something for people to experiment with and see what they like the most. So here's an example of some homework that I graded using Microsoft OneNote and my writing tablet. So of course I just select whatever color I want to grade with and make my comments and explain what's wrong and what's right, and of course share that with the student. And so you can see with some practice it can become quite legible, and you can write quite similar in size to what students typically do on their homework. Here's another example just showing a page or a picture from Microsoft OneNote where I was writing formulas and drawing pictures to have a discussion with a student who was working on a senior project. And so that was a really helpful way to communicate and make sure they were understanding what I was describing. Now, as far as video recording, I know that it is possible to record presentations inside Microsoft Teams. And my students certainly would help me sometimes with that. They would sometimes record homework help sessions, or sessions where they were asking me questions in class rather than during the time where I was doing presentations. So certainly, if you're comfortable with Microsoft Teams doing the recordings to video, that's a way, of course, that works. But I liked to use Open Broadcaster, which is a free open source software that I found online. And I have found that to be really useful. Sometimes it might be that outside of Microsoft Teams, you want to record and capture your screen while you're talking in the background. And Open Broadcaster is a really great piece of software that allows you to do that. And so I've used that a lot, and there were occasions where I did record some videos for my students, and then outside of class, they were able to listen to those that way. There were a few times I did that, and I've certainly used this software in previous quarters to do that same thing for other classes or for labs, where I wanted students to be able to listen to videos rather than taking up lab time. And so then I made these videos, and I should say videos, handouts, any discussions I had in Microsoft OneNote. I actually put them in the files folder inside Microsoft Teams for my individual classes, and my students seem to prefer that. I know D2L is also a way that people share course content, but I had small enough group of students that they were satisfied with that, and that's what I did anyway. So now here's an example of video editing. I've discovered a video editor that, at least right now, I really appreciate, and that is, it's called Shotcut. And it also is free open source software. And I recently found that. I'm still learning. But I recently was able to do a video in the lab where I did a screen capture plus a webcam capture. And I actually had another computer running simultaneously with another video. And I started those videos with the help of Dr. Chin Ma at the same time. And so then you're just seeing a screen capture here, but basically the screen, these two web cameras were all being videoed simultaneously. And then inside Shotcut, I was actually able to paste these two together. And so this small vertical rectangle is actually a video going on over at the left, at the same time as you see the information going on in the right hand side. And so just that one thing, I think, is I didn't know that you could do that, but I was able to splice all that stuff together and save it, and I'm going to be able to use that or share that with the people doing Mechanics and Materials Lab this next this coming quarter. And so anyway, if you have an interest in video editing, you might consider Shotcut. If you need to do any converting between various video formats, there's this free software that Gary Rittenbach shared with me once, and it may even be on the campus computers, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's called Handbrake. And of course, MP4 file format is the very popular one, but if for some reason you feel like you need to convert to MP4 or some other format, you can load in whatever your video is in whatever format it is, and then if you know how to use this, it can convert it to other formats. So that might be useful. So now some future improvements that I'm thinking of for myself. As I indicated at the beginning of this presentation, I just shared my screen, and I'm not sure how well that works compared to if you go in Microsoft Teams and you actually go and select the PowerPoint application or PowerPoint file, and so it behaves a little differently that way. That's something I need to play with a little more. My students seemed fine with how I was doing it, but I know people do it both ways, and so that might be something I could do better, but I'm still learning. Also, I didn't have very many students, so I had them just email their homework to me. But as many of you know, that is probably not the best idea if you have lots of students. So a Dropbox in D2L would be a better way to do it, because it keeps it all in one place and you don't run the risk of maybe missing or forgetting about an email that was sent to you. And I haven't ever used a Dropbox in D2L, but I feel like that's something I need to learn, and I know many of you have already been using that. Also, I'm not sure how D2L does it, but I'm guessing maybe it also is a way by which the homework and papers and exams can be returned to students. I don't know, but I think that's true. And so that also is something that I need to learn. I'm sure there are other things, but those are the ones that I have thought of so far. So before I finish, I'm just going to mention here that if you do choose to install if you choose to install Open Broadcaster, I have a bonus slide at the end here, and it basically has some instructions how to solve a particular problem that I noticed recently when I was helping someone install Open Broadcaster recently. It turns out that you may set up Open Broadcaster and then you're trying to capture your screen and all you're getting is a black screen. And if you find that that happens, you would want to look at these instructions, and it seems to solve that problem so that you then can start to capture your desktop, for example. So these slides, I'm definitely going to put in a place where people can get access to it. I guess I will talk to Brian about where that is, or obviously if you want to email me if you're wanting these slides, I can certainly give you or send you the link to where this will be kept. And so with that, I am going to should I keep the recording going or should I stop it for the question section?